guy was staggering, and he's like, oh, he must be drunk. He gets closer, and the guy's drenched in blood. I mean, he's just completely...
From his head.
Yeah. And both of his eyes were swollen shut. He was a fucking mess. And as soon as we came out, boom, there they were, right across the street from us.
How many?
There's like 30 of them.
Wow.
And my partner and I, Bobby Powers, we looked at each other, and I was like, Bobby, there's no way we're going to get these kids. I said, I mean, well, the most we can get is 2. Mm-hmm. You know, the rest of them are going to be in the wind.
Hey, what's up? Finally, a nice, beautiful day. It's 77 degrees out, and we are here in Ossining, New York, the Palatial Estates, the home, what is it called? The command center.
Yeah, the
temporary
command and control center.
The temporary command and control center. I'm Mark DeMeo. I'm with my co-host, Bill Cannon. What's up, Bill?
I'm doing good, man. Looking forward to our next episode.
Yeah, today is going to be really, really, really exciting. I did a lot of research on this. It's an interesting case, and just to give you a heads up what you can expect. Was it August? No. April 19th, 1989. Some kids went wilding in Central Park, and a jogger by the name of Patricia Mealy was raped. And now there's a new movie that's coming out. It's a document. I think it's a docuseries on Netflix, and it's called How They See Us. And it's about the Central Park Five, the kids that were charged with the rape of Patricia Mealy in Central Park that night, and whatever happened, the results of it, the outcome. And it's a really, really interesting, fascinating story. And we're honored today to have our guest with us. He was a police officer with the NYPD, a detective. Were you a detective too?
I was a detective, but I was a cop at the time.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. Without further ado, Eric Reynolds.
Hey.
How you doing?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Bill, Mark.
Thanks for coming up, man. We tried really hard to get you. You weren't an easy get.
No, he wasn't, man.
I'm all booked up.
He was a little.
It's like trying to get
resistant.
Trying to get the hottest chick in high school to go with you to the prom, man. This guy, he would not he would not return the calls. Bill was getting pissed. All he kept saying is, "Man, he would be such a great guest if he would just fucking return my calls. He won't call me back."
When were you calling me?
I don't know. I was probably using the wrong communication. I was probably on Facebook or message, and you didn't. And then I called you, and you answered me right back. So
communicating with Bill is like this. Okay, so he'll send me a text message, and I'll reply on the text message, and then he'll reply to me on Facebook Messenger. And we just go back and forth between the two. And then there might be a couple of Facebook messages. So we're on all three all day. I'm just chasing Bill's messages around.
Yeah, I'm constantly getting messages on Facebook. Like, I'll look at my email account, and I'll say, you got an email from somebody on Facebook, and there'll be like 5 or 6 of them a day. And it's usually because those people's accounts are hacked. So I just assume whenever I get one, it's just, it's one of those. It's a spam.
You're getting spams?
It's a spam email.
Yeah, I got a text message I showed you guys last night from a guy named Dan. I don't remember this guy at all. It was at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like,
who's Dan?
Dan.
I'm like, I told you it was
Did I pass out?
I said, hey, listen, Dan, it was a one and done. I told you that from the beginning, man. Leave me alone.
It happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas.
How many years were you on the job?
20.
20 years. You did 20 and out?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. What year did you come on?
81.
All right. So
July 81.
Was that a huge class?
So you've been out a while.
Class was huge, right?
Yeah, it was a big class.
81 was too?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think we had about 1,000 people.
Well, but 82 had 3,000.
How long have you been out?
Right. Yeah, they were bigger than us. I've been out like close to 20 years now.
Wow.
I retired 42 days before 9/11.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I should have stayed now that I look back at it. But because I'm working for the Board of Ed now, man. The Board of Ed is just the worst. It is the.
Think anyone will
I feel like that too.
From them?
The most poorly run city agency I've ever seen in my life.
Most city agencies are poorly run, except for the police department. The only one that is accountable to everyone is the police department. The rest of them are like ridiculous.
There's no accounting. There's no chain of command. Nobody takes orders from anybody. Everybody's just doing what they want to do.
Exactly.
It's a mess.
What is it that you do for the border, Ed?
I'm an investigator.
Okay.
I was in the Office of Pupil Transportation. That kind of
bus driver. Bus driver.
Investigating bus drivers.
Oh,
and the
no, I was kidding.
Oh, my God.
No, you said I was in charge of people
Ralph Cramden
transportation.
committing a lot of crimes.
I'm gonna make a lot of jokes, so you know.
Trust me, the last thing you want to do is drive a school bus. Then those kids are out of control.
Yeah, I can just imagine, man. That's a tough job.
We got drivers and attendants getting kicked in the face, getting sexually assaulted. I mean, you name it. We got parents threatening to kill them. It's
Sounds like a nice job.
Yeah.
And then, God forbid, you leave one on the bus. Oh my God,
we get them
pissed.
locked up. we have them locked up too.
Yeah, I believe it.
You know, search the bus. The kid wakes up. The bus is in.
It's kind of sort of to me like the easiest thing that you would do, and knowing that you would do it like 3 or 4 times, like the way you keep going back in your apartment.
Went back in the plane as it was filling up with water. He did it 3 times.
Yeah, huh?
And these school buses aren't filling up with water. You just have to check, see if there's a kid.
Yeah, I know. When I leave my apartment, man, I go back 3 times. It's like an OCD thing. I think I left the toaster oven on. Did I shut off all the lights? I go back like 3 times.
Well, plus we get drivers that they have special needs kids. They don't give them to the parents. They'll give them to the mailman. They'll give them to some junkie. I had an attendant throw a kid off the bus because he was acting up. You know, before it got to a stop, she just like, come on, out, get out.
Threw him out.
Threw him out. He's working at McDonald's now. But,
yeah, man.
This is 15 an hour.
That's a tough job, man.
Oh yeah.
You know, people always said, you know, oh, being a cop is such a tough job. And then you hear other people's jobs. They're like, hey, it's not as tough as being a bus driver. I'll tell you that. That's crazy, man. That's guaranteed everyday insanity. At least because whenever you're driving the kids to school, it's always going to be insanity.
Yes.
Unless they're really tired for whatever reason that day.
The morning, they're usually quiet. The afternoon, that's when the problems
I could
start.
see that.
You know, especially if it's like one of those runs where the kids are on for like an hour or 2. Because you got like 2-hour runs for some of these.
Dropping the kids all over, right?
Yeah. Yep. But the bus companies make it worse because they'll hire anybody. Mm-hmm. They'll have Al Qaeda driving those buses if you let them. I was doing the background checks on the drivers, and I had guys coming in sent by the bus companies. They've done homicides, rape, robberies, home invasions, narcotics trafficking. I had one guy, 8 convictions for identity theft.
And he was a bus driver?
They wanted him to be.
A couple of them were. A couple of them had been. I had one guy who was beating up his grandmother, and he had been driving a bus. And his recertification came up. I had to do the background check, and I was like, no, can't do it. And he was following me on Facebook. He was leaving me threatening messages on Facebook. I was like, oh, okay, you're a nice guy. And another guy was beating the hell out of his wife. I mean, I don't know how many convictions he had for that. And he said, you know, the police were framing him and stuff. He goes, I'll even get a certified letter from my wife that I don't hit her. I said, what, are you going to beat the shit out of her to get it? Come on. Come on.
Amazing, right?
So I guess, yeah, you did it. But what was the urge to get out after 20? What was the bug in your ass?
You know, looking back at it now.
Because everybody always says, oh, you better get out now. People stick around, and it never gets any worse. It could get worse. Yeah, I mean, it's just asking you to do more work or being more responsible. That's what they mean by getting worse.
Yeah.
But also, too, worse by you could possibly get indicted. And now I read somewhere, I'm trying to think of what state it is. I think it's California that you have to, there's a new word they're using for police shootings over there. And if you don't follow that protocol or you can't express or articulate that word that they just came up with now, justifying a shooting, then you're going to go to prison.
So in other words, you got to get like shot first, and then you can shoot back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it's coming pretty much. Or shot at. Yeah.
Get wounded.
I did the 20, but I wanted to get to this fabulous career that I'm doing now. So it all worked out good.
No.
Now, like I told Bill, I've had a bunch of TV spots. I've written for a TV show. I've the commercial. I've written a one-man show. All that in 5 years. Done a lot of different things in 5 years. But you put all of them together, and they all equal to nothing. Because
All
here
of
we
it-
are.
But
Oh,
all
wait a
of it
second.
Pales compared to Police Off the Cuff podcast.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
this
it's
is
true.
honestly, I'm proud of this thing. This is like the best thing I've ever done.
But Mark, remember, Sinbad said it best. You never know how close you are to turning the corner.
Yeah, that's bullshit. No, really. Every single freaking famous person that tells you, it's just never quit. Listen, if you've been doing this thing for 2 or 3 years, then nobody's feeling you. You don't get the fuck out. Do something else. Try something. I'm telling you, quit while you're ahead. It's.
For our audience, he's talking about stand-up comedy.
Oh, I'm talking
He's
about
not talking
anything, and
police
I'm
work.
talking about anything in life. Anything in life. If it doesn't start working out for you at some point, quit, man. Because like he mentioned, stand up. That's a relationship. You probably know it's an abusive relationship. You'll
Like
never
being married.
Yeah, it's worse than being married because it destroys all your other relationships.
Yeah.
Your relationship with your wife, depending on who your spouse is, doesn't have to be. You could still have friends. Some people are cooler than others. Especially if they can trust you. But that's a whole other thing. Let's get back to you. Where did you grow up?
The Bronx.
Yeah, what part of the Bronx?
Castle Hill.
Oh, that's good.
Well,
I
I
go
live-
over there to get Dominican food. I live in a country club.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What's the name of that place? La Brisa?
Yeah.
Which one
By
is
the
that?
train station, right? So just
No,
a
I
couple
don't think
blocks.
it's Brisa something. Breeze something. Oh man.
Where Mark starts to
See,
speak Spanish.
This is the good thing about the Spanish food is that it's great. It's one of the best tasting foods, and it's not that expensive. Over there you can go there, you have stuffed. They got to wheel you out for $15. Steak, rice and beans, plátano, maduro, whatever you want.
I worked in the 3-4. It was
Yeah, the 3-4 is
Paradise.
great too.
oh,
The
El
3-4.
Conde Steakhouse. Mofongo. I know the names of all those places.
You could do a lot worse, man. I worked in the 110, the 115. The food there was great, and a lot of times it was on the arm, so it was beautiful. So
there you go. There you go.
But so you grew up in the Bronx. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to DeWitt Clinton for 2 years, and that's when it was all boys. And I was getting up
Then
at
they put the girls in there, and you got pissed. You're like, I'm out of here. I'm going.
No, that was way after I left.
Oh.
As a matter of fact, what used to happen was I would get on the bus. I have to get up extra early. It would go past Stevenson, and all these hot Spanish girls all, hanging out. And I'm going to an all-boys school, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Was it priests? Was the old boys school priests?
No. It
Brothers?
it was a regular public school.
It was a regular public school boys.
Yeah. Because it was DeWitt Clinton was all boys, and Walton, a couple of blocks away, was all girls.
Yeah, so you made the switch, right?
Yeah, I was like, this is crazy. What am I
smart.
doing?
That's the first inkling detective work right there.
Yeah.
You
Go with
found, you found the girls. You found the way to get in there.
Yes.
So, did you go to college afterwards?
I went to Lehman College and dropped out after 6 months. Mm-hmm. Just wasn't, I guess it wasn't for me at the time. So I went to worked as a bank teller for a year. That sucked.
Yeah, you didn't like that job either?
You ever get held up?
No.
In the Bronx? In a bank? You ever got held up?
No, I was in Manhattan
Oh, it
on
was
East
in Manhattan.
56th Street and 3rd Avenue.
Well, Midtown used to have a lot of bank robberies.
That's true.
That's another job that's not that bad because mostly you're around women all day working with other women there, right?
True,
Plus
true.
you're young, you're right. That's the type of job you
And
get
more
when you're
banks
out
have good AC.
Yeah, they got AC.
Yeah, that
and
they had.
and you have banking hours. Dum-dum.
That's right.
And we had a soda machine. We had like a soda fountain downstairs, so you get as much free soda as you want.
Wow.
Wow. All right,
That
there
makes
you go.
that $5 an hour palatable.
You ever get the girls from drag one of them downstairs? Not drag. That's a bad word to use, but get them to come downstairs. Did you over there?
No, none of the women I worked with were really that, at that time,
What?
They were nice, but they weren't, weren't really my type.
Oh, who cares? All right, so you're working at the bank. When do you take the police test?
While I was working at the bank.
Yeah.
That was, what was that? 78, 79.
Wow.
I took the police test
You
and I
look
took
good,
the
bro.
fire.
How old are you?
I'm going to be 60.
Yeah, you look good.
Thank you.
Yeah. That haircut works. Very short, crop like
It
that.
works.
Have to.
No, it does.
Totally gray.
If you want to grow 2 inches taller, just grow Hair like that.
Yeah, I can't stop. I just got a haircut yesterday. It grows like weeds. I can't stop it. So you took the police test while you were working in the bank. How long did it take for you to get on?
Let's see. I got on in July of '81, so I think it was 2 years. I got called by the fire department also.
Oh, you turned that down?
Yeah.
You wanted nothing to do with fires.
No, because you know what? The way I see it is this: if you're going to be a fireman, if you're going to take that job, then it's got to be something that's in your blood. You know.
Yeah.
There's no point, because you see it on our job. You see the guys who are just there just to get a paycheck, and they're kind of a...
Yeah, you can't be just getting a paycheck in the fire department, because you're going to have to run in there.
Yeah, there's a fire, I'm going to be like, well, I'll wait in the truck. I'll watch the truck while you guys
Generations and generations
My
of
friend Richie.
firemen, right, from the same family. Same thing as a lot of cops, but I think that's changed a lot, right?
My friend Richie died. He was a power lifter, a monster, strong as deadlift 600 pounds, or 500, I think it was. And he died he was a firefighter. He died in the Bronx, going into it was an abandoned house. See, to me, that's the crazy part. And I know that's part of your job. You got to do it. You got to run into that. God forbid there's somebody, shacking up in there and clear it out. And he went down in the basement, never came out. And that was a guy who was so strong, man. So if it could happen to him, it could happen to anybody, man.
Yeah.
That guy was top physical shape, man. May he rest in peace. I could see why you didn't want that job. I took the fireman test too. They didn't call me. I was part of that the exam where they wound up suing for discrimination. Because as quiet as it's kept, and it's not kept that quiet, I'll tell anybody in their mother. My name's not Mark DeMeo. My last name is Sanchez. It's Mayoanex Sanchez. I'm half Dominican. That's my real name, Mayoanex.
I don't want to be on this show with you anymore.
You quit, right? But I was part of that test, and I got 100 flying. Passed it with like 10 seconds to go, the physical. And then for some reason, the written, they were supposed to give you 5 points for living in New York. I didn't get it. I don't know what happened. I should have had that job, but thank God I didn't, man. I enjoyed my time on the PD. I think that was a better fit, obviously, for you too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Who wants to be in a firehouse fighting over who has more peas on their plate?
Yeah, but at least they cook for each other, man. They treat each other like gentlemen, man. And they sleep. They get to sleep. And let me tell you something. That's a good job. Other than fighting the fires, that's the best job you could have. You know what I'm saying?
They're charred. It's like
I'm great at that. I'm great at
job, right?
I'm great at eating. I could learn how to cook a dish. Everybody learns how to cook one meal.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? And working out, I used to love to do that too. Sleeping. Did I mention I'm good at that?
I like that.
So what was your first command?
5'2".
Okay.
5'2", Webster Avenue.
So you stayed in the Bronx?
Marshall Parkway. Yeah, I was
You
in the
liked
Bronx
it?
for 5 years. It was good. It was, yeah, I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. I was in the 5'2", but then I went to the Vice Squad. Back then it was Public Morals.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was interesting. I was my job was reading porn, gambling, drinking, and picking up hookers.
Yeah, I used to do that, but I wasn't getting paid for it.
And you know what? It's not as glamorous as people think it is.
Get out of here. Of course it is. You get used to it. That's all it is.
First of all, you got to work really late at night because you got to
Talk
do
to
the
somebody
social
working
clubs.
in a cubicle. What they did today.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Or in a bank.
That's true. But now you go out, you're drinking. It's 3:00 in the morning. You got to go back to the command. You got to type up paperwork. You're fucking half lit. It's like this is the point where I'm going home. I'm going to bed. Instead, I'm going to work.
Did you get your shield out of Vice or no?
No. Nope. I left there. That's when I went to Central Park.
Okay.
To the squad?
Because back then there was no 18-month rule yet. There was no 18-month law that you got promoted to detective after 18 months.
Right.
People would be in investigative units for 5-6 years and they never got the shield, right?
Yeah. I had a falling out with a boss. We were hitting a number spot once, and as we were walking in, there was 4 of us. So the sergeant and another cop, they walk into the spot. Me and another guy, we noticed this guy. There was a guy outside ready to pummel this girl. There was just like a domestic dispute, but he hadn't put his hands on her. But it was clear he was just about to kick the shit out of her. So we stood by, to make sure nothing happened to her. When the other two, when the sergeant,
You're in plain clothes?
Yeah, and the sergeant and the cop go inside. They go behind the plexi and they get the money. They get the slips. They place the person who was working there under arrest. So it was supposed to be my collar, and I took the collar. but he wanted me to say, that I I found the money and stuff behind the plexi. And I said, no, I was informed by you. I said, come on. I mean, what's the point? And, I know it doesn't seem like
yourself.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
Have to, yeah.
It's an easy way to get fired. It's something that's easy to avoid.
You're not supposed to do that.
And it doesn't cost anybody anything. It's no big deal that I say that you handed it to me and you witnessed it. Come on, that's a ground ball.
Yeah.
Let's say they have hidden cameras set up in there because they used to do that to keep the workers from stealing money.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, because that happened once in the 2-3 in the number spot, they had a camera set up and they caught a vice squad lieutenant stealing money because the boss is supposed to go behind the plexi and count the money. I don't know if you know Mary Reynold. I used to work with her in the 5-2. So they get a videotape. She's counting the money. One for you, one for me, one for you, two for me. And it's clear. It's clear. She's pocketing all this cash. But these guys are slick. You know what they do? Instead of going to internal affairs or anything like that, they make copies of the tape of her stealing, and they start selling it on the street. And he's selling it as a get-out-of-jail-free card. So he's telling the drug dealers, look, $300, you can have this video. If you ever get caught, say, hey, here, let's make a deal. I got a cop who's dirty. Mm-hmm. And they sold a whole bunch of them.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. But she ended up getting locked up. They locked her up, and she lost the job, and it's unfortunate.
For pennies. For pennies, usually,
Yeah.
Yeah, man, a short end. So, how did you said you were in public morals, and you were there for 5 years, and this was the incident that basically now you're not going to work there anymore. Did you?
No, it was a year. I was there for a year.
In public morals?
Yeah, I was in the Bronx for 5 years. 1 year was in the Vice Squad, and the 4 was in the 5-2.
Oh, okay. But after the Vice Squad, that's when you went to Central Park, right?
Yeah.
And it was over that incident, like you just had to get out of there because you had beef with that boss.
That was my punishment. He'd actually told our captain that I was trying to set him up, to get him jammed up. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? But anyway, I get put under house arrest. I'm not allowed to leave the precinct for a week. And the captain asked me, he goes, well, where do you want to go? You know that you're leaving. At least we'll give you what you want.
A soft landing.
Yeah. So I go, all right, well, any place busy. I don't care. 4-4, 4-6.
That was great to say that because then they send you to Central Park where there's nothing going on.
That's exactly what he did. Fucking set me up, man.
You would have said the slowest place
possible.
You
know what you tell him? I enjoy long commutes. I'm a big fan of the subway. Love getting on there. If you could put me at the last stop, next thing you know, you're working
in Staten Island.
Yeah, but they do the exact opposite. That's the funny thing about the job is once they find out like what your Achilles is, that's what they'll attack.
They go right for it.
I wasn't really a big overtime guy. Because I was always doing comedy, so I was always doing stuff afterward, either coaching my son's baseball team, but then it was always comedy at night. So they had nothing on me. They couldn't punish me by taking away my overtime. But when they're going to transfer you, isn't it funny that they transfer you to somewhere usually where it's slower? Like I know somebody that got bounced out of the 2-4, and it was the 2-6 squad, and they went down to the first. Like you're talking about the 2-6 is not that busy, but there's you could catch 10 cases a week.
Wait,
it happens?
Was Al Travers running the 2-6 at the time?
No, that was way before him.
No, we had Frank.
I remember Al Travers.
Yeah, Lieutenant Frank.
Yeah.
What was it called? The contract. What was that contract? The social contract. The 2-6 is. It's on 126th Street, and it's right off of Amsterdam, and it covers from 110th Street to kind of sort of like 140, the water to, I think, St. Nicholas.
Yeah.
And they call it the hole in the donut because it's somehow just the crime seems to happen, or the shootings anyway, seem to happen around the precinct, just a block outside. And we had a Lieutenant Frank there, and I remember he always used to talk to us about the social contract because we were in a slowdown at one time. We were in between contracts. You know what happens when you're in between contracts. It's like a slowdown, whatever. So he's trying to talk us out of out of this slow down and getting us, pumping us up. And he says, you guys, it's not all about the money. It's about you guys signed a social contract. You know what I'm saying? So then one time I had a caller and I had to have a boss view the lineup. And it was about 1/4 to the time that he's supposed to leave, go home. So I said, hey, Lou, can you stick around a couple of minutes and view the lineup so I don't have to call the covering boss? He looks at his watch. He goes, you know what? I'm going to have to leave in 15 minutes because that's when I'm done then. You better have called the covering sergeant. I said, it's only going to be like 10 minutes. And he's like, yeah, I called the covering sergeant. I said, what happened to the social contract? That's it, man. The fucking guy hated me from that point on, man. So
get launched.
So you got launched, soft landing into Central Park, right?
Yeah.
What's that like working there? What tours did you do?
I worked around the clock. We still had the 9 squad chart then.
Okay.
It was like, it's a cross between...
You're back in uniform now.
Yes. It's a cross between Hogan's Heroes and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
They put a lot of people like broken toys in there, right?
That's all it is.
In Central Park, that's for sure.
That's all it is.
Yeah, I used to work with a detective that wound up in Central Park in the squad there, and he was a lot of fun to work with, man. But he couldn't rely on him too much. No. One time he called up, he put me in the book. I'm on my way, and then it was like an hour and a half, 2 hours later. He goes, the boss come by yet? I'm like, no, not yet. And he goes, all right, I'll be right in. And then like an hour and a half, 2 hours later, he calls me up. He goes, hey, listen, tell me I'm going to take lost time. No. He goes, tell me I'm banging in. He left me at Herpes Triangle one night. He insisted on taking the car. He said, I'm going to take my own car up there because I know you. No. We'll take one car. So we go to Herpes Triangle. We're having as soon as we walk in the first bar, he disappears. I never see him again. I had to take a cab back. Couldn't find him. Well, I did. I found him making out with some, the girl in the back. But that was in the early part of the night. Like an hour later, I couldn't find him. I wound up taking a cab back. But that's so he wound up in Central Park. That's the type of people that are.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's hard to survive there. You got to be on your toes. I used to.
What do you mean? Why is it hard to survive?
Because it's in the wintertime, there's nothing there. There's no houses, there's no stores. If
you're on a foot post?
If you don't have a scooter, yeah. And
what about cars? There's no cars?
Cars are very few. It's hard to get a seat.
Yeah, sure.
There's no heat in those scooters, right? Is there heat in there?
The 3-wheel scooters, yeah.
Can you hook them up? Can you change the engine and maybe put some mags on there?
Well, guys, we had guys that had them steady, and they felt like they owned them, so they would chain them up.
Oh, so they couldn't use their scooter.
Yeah, so we used to come in. I had lock picks, so I used to pick the locks on the ones I used, and I worked with another guy who...
It's amazing.
How'd you have the keys for them?
No, lock pick. I just stick. There's a universal key for each for the scooters. Okay. So once you have the universal key, you could drive any of them. But another guy named Keith, what he would do is he used to bring a plumber's wrench to work, and the steering wheel on the 3-wheel scooter has a big nut on it. So he would just unscrew the nut and take the steering wheel off because that's how it was chained on.
Some real dirtbags on the job.
And then he would take the wrench and he would use that to steer it. But they found out because the guy who had the scooter was driving it one day, and all of a sudden the steering wheel came off
because he stripped it.
Yeah,
taking it off too much, he stripped it.
And the rumor was he hit a mime in front of the Museum of Modern Art.
Did he say "ouch"? Like what is he?
It's like "ouch."
So he hit a mime.
That's pretty funny. Mimes aren't allowed to scream either. You have to stay in
He has to scream and mime
by a scooter.
Exactly. He's just laying there.
So that's hysterical. I can just imagine the stories of Central Park working there, man. So the scooters were of value, let's say.
Oh yeah, a hot commodity. Very hot commodity.
But even the bosses there were broken toys too, weren't they?
Yes. Yes.
And the park is huge, right? Give the person who's not from New York City a description of what Central Park is like.
Central Park is 700 acres, and it is, people think it's just land that was there and, that was declared a park, but actually it was a contest to, for it to be designed, and it was made to be lush and the paths and drives, very rolling. There's parts of Central Park you could go into, and you wouldn't even know you were in the middle of Manhattan. If I blindfolded you and drove you there and let you up, you wouldn't know you were in Manhattan at all.
Right.
Bill played that game a lot, so he knows his way around now.
But it is, for the first couple of months I was there, just always lost. It takes a long time to figure out, to get your bearings there. And that was the number one question we would get all the time. People,
Lost.
where am I? Where am I? Where am I? Yeah.
Don't some of the poles there, though, have the street number that
Yes.
correlates with where the
But you
pole
got to
is?
get close to the outer. So
You got to know that.
geographically, give us geographically the Central Park. There's a Central Park West, Central Park East. It goes from what street to what street?
All right. So it's
Well, that's Fifth Avenue. It's not considered
right.
Central Park East.
it's Fifth Avenue, and
So Fifth Avenue is the dividing pole. At what street does it start?
it starts at 110th Street.
No, I'm talking about the lower.
Southern end.
Southern end is 59th.
59th Street it starts.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the span of it, I guess, going east to west is what?
I think it's 4 blocks.
4 city blocks, which is
Yeah.
probably a quarter mile.
Yeah.
So it's a quarter mile.
Yeah.
And then it runs from 59th Street all the way up to 110th Street.
Yes. Yep.
And inside that's 7 acres, basically, right?
700.
700 acres. Wow. Okay. Then I obviously don't know what an acre is. Okay. Anyway, so inside Central Park, you have there's a famous restaurant there, or there used to be, right? Tavern on the
Tavern
Green.
on the Green. Yeah.
That's kind of sort of in the beginning of the park, right? Right. Once you enter on 59th Street.
Yeah. It's on Central Park West, around 60th, 61st Street.
Is it still open? Or they closed it down now? Somebody else bought it, I think, right?
Yeah, I
They went
remember.
through some problems.
Right. I'm not sure if it's still called Tavern on the Green. I'm pretty sure there's still a restaurant there. What it's called, I don't
And then
know.
you got Strawberry Fields, where John Lennon, he has his monument over there, his memorial.
Right.
Imagine, right? That's kind of what
72nd Street,
over there,
Central
right?
Park West.
Over
Yeah.
Central, you come in
The
there.
Dakota is right there.
And where's the zoo? There's a zoo.
Yes, that's on 5th Avenue near 59th.
Oh, really? How big is the zoo?
That's a good question. I haven't really been in it.
I mean, they got like real animals now. It's not
yeah,
like
yeah. I worked with a cop who years ago, a homeless man had gotten into the enclosure with the polar bear, and this guy ended up
course.
shooting him. He had to kill the polar bear
Oh, man,
to save the guy's life.
Why would he do that?
You should have seen the hate mail he got.
Oh,
he still has it.
That happened in the Bronx.
Yeah.
Except 2 kids went into with the polar bear.
I remember
they
that.
had to kill the polar bears with shotguns, ESU.
Yeah.
I don't think a 9 would kill a polar bear. I don't know.
He had a 38.
And they killed the polar bear?
Oh my
Yeah.
God!
Wow.
I hate those stories.
Got him right in the heart, I guess.
So you got the zoo there, and then the reservoir. That's a famous thing. The reservoir is that it's the body of water in there, right? Where you
Yeah.
can rent paddle boats and stuff.
No, that's the lake.
Oh, that's the lake. What is the reservoir?
The reservoir is 96th Street to 86th Street, and it was Manhattan's water supply at one time, and then once the city started getting water from upstate,
The Croton Aqueduct. That's where
Right.
they get it from now. Yeah.
right? Then the reservoir was no longer needed, but the reservoir was actually at one time like the Great Lawn. It was another.
Oh, that's another thing there. The Great Lawn.
Yeah, it was just like it was like an identical twin to it. It was just right across 86th Street. There was actually another reservoir over where the public library is on 42nd Street. Before the library was there was an actual reservoir that supplied all of
that's
Manhattan.
interesting.
Wow.
So you mentioned the Great Lawn. Yeah, I've been on that. I remember when I got to Warren's, I think it was my first day. I heard 2, you're doing that. It's like a mock roll call. Just everybody's meeting. The bosses are meeting the new people there. And 2 guys are talking about how they're going to go to Central Park and watch Sheryl Crow sing. So I was like, you guys mind if I tag along? I said, no, come on. So after that roll call, we took a walk. We were on 89th and or 91st and 1st. We took a walk to Central Park, tinned our way in right to the front. I'm talking about 4 or 5 rows off. We would have stayed in the front, but then you can't see that good. So perfect.
Yeah.
We watched the whole concert. Everybody, Keith Richards, the Dixie Chicks, Sheryl Crow.
Wow.
Yeah, it was not a bad night.
It's a good job.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's a great thing. The lawn, the great lawn there, and then as you go further up, what else is up there?
Let's see, the Boathouse.
Oh, the Boathouse.
Like you mentioned before, the Boathouse, which is a restaurant and they rent. That's where you rent the boats from and the paddle boats, and that's right next to the Bethesda fountain. The fountain with the statue of the woman in the middle of it, and they have that little plaza there, which goes underneath 72nd Street. And then there's the band shells right there also.
They do concerts there. People sit in the laundry. Remember Bloomberg with the wine?
Yeah.
You bring wine over there. Anyway, so basically, what I'm trying to get to is this is a beautiful place, Central Park, isn't it?
Yes.
It should be There should be like the 8th wonder of the world. They're just beautiful.
Amazing
The
park,
fact that it's in New York City and has all these different things, and on one side of it you have Fifth Avenue.
Yes.
And from 59th Street all the way up Fifth Avenue till, I guess, back then, you're talking about 89, right?
Yeah.
Back then, I think right about 96th Street, they told you, oh, my man, if you were white, they said, you should probably turn around and go back.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
it
The
was-
most expensive real estate right there. And on the other side, too, Central Park West.
Well, on the weekend, you can go anywhere because there was just so many people. But weekdays, weeknights, you're taking a chance.
People ran around the reservoir, right? That's what it's... And you can bike around it, too?
No, I don't.
There's a
Biking's
6-mile
not
loop people take in the park on a bike.
right.
Does it cross... Is it by the reservoir? Or I guess it's somewhere...
it goes
else.
around the
Loop
reservoir,
around there, the whole park. Yeah.
but it's the reservoir is only for runners, and it's 1.6 miles.
Okay.
Because I used to run it every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
While you were working in uniform, or...
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, I was an anti-crime.
You were practicing to chase perps, right?
I was. Let me tell you.
Were you in anti-crime then?
Yeah.
In Central Park?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I made those collars.
Okay, so we're getting there. I wanted to just paint the picture of what Central Park is, especially people who've never been. They're not from this city. It's this palatial. It's almost like up here, the palatial estates.
Yes.
It's a beautiful park right in the middle of the city. So many different attractions. On one side of it, Fifth Avenue, you got the most expensive real estate in probably in the country. At Central Park West too, and then now you're working. You're working in there in Central Park, but you said you were in uniform, and now you got the anti-crime. Was that hard to get in there, or just basically you just said, "Hey, could I do it?"
Yeah, pretty
None
much.
of these other guys want to do anything.
Pretty much. If you were making collars, I used to make collars all the time. So I was like one
How
of the
big is
very
the Central
few.
Park anti-crime team anyway?
It was like 4 of us.
1.5, right? One and a half per tour.
To make collars, I had to poach. I had to go out on Fifth Avenue.
Oh, you did?
Central Park West. Sure. I do car stops.
And you guide them in, you drag them in the park. Hey, you, come over here.
I used to love those green Parks Department vans you guys would use.
That's what we were using.
That was great. Those were pretty good undercover cars.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, those were.
What happened?
They had these green Parks Department vehicles.
Yeah, I know those vans, yeah.
No one took it as a police
Army
car.
green.
Yeah.
With the leaves on it.
Yeah, Parks Department people used to think we were parks workers. We had like some supervisor drive by and yell at us.
So you used to be in plain clothes driving around in that van. That must have been a ground ball then.
When I
Yeah.
had the 2-4 anti-crime, I'd drive into the park with, in a taxi, and all these Upper West Side libs would scream at me, "The park is closed! The park is closed!"
Cutting through that park.
Yeah.
We didn't mention this about the park too, though. You can actually drive through there.
Yeah.
You can go north to south. You can go east to west. And there's east to west is usually the route that they let civilians go. The north and south, they close that up often. But I remember doing it because I worked in the 2-4 and then the 2-6. I remember using that like crazy, man. It was just a great way to
They
go.
wanted it totally closed to vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Park Conservancy, isn't it?
They want the whole
people
city
that-
close to vehicles.
The politics of Central Park. The Central Park Conservancy.
We should let grass
Very
go right in the middle of the
Yeah,
street.
they
We could
are.
walk
I mean,
barefoot.
I
We
had
could
a
do
woman
that.
one time come
Horses
up to me.
again.
I
Let's
was
do
in a
horses.
marked car in the park. This obnoxious woman comes up to me. She goes, "You're not supposed to idle your car." Mm-hmm. And it's a marked police car. I said, "Lady, doesn't apply to me. So keep walking. You know.
Oh, and she must have been. Oh,
She was like, how dare you speak to me?
like from the Polander commercial.
The third's wife, you know.
So you're working in anti-crime. How long were you working in anti-crime? When did you get in there? How long before you? Before April 19th.
April 19th.
April 19th.
1989.
How long were you working there before that night?
That's a good question. I don't think it was even a year. It's probably about 6 months.
All right. So you're still a little wet behind the ears there.
Yeah.
It's a little green.
The green Parks Department car.
So you're, what was your tour that night?
4 to 12. Working at 4 to 12.
Were you using the van that night?
Mm-hmm.
So you were in that van. You were in plain clothes.
Yep.
And what time roughly did these calls start coming over? Because what are the calls that are coming over, first of all?
Well, the first calls we started.
How was the night? Was it a nice night out?
Yeah, it was nice. It was quiet. I had just run, and it was, it was cool, but it wasn't, uncomfortably cold.
Okay.
Yeah, everything was quiet like usual because the place is dead. So I used to hate working there. And then we just started getting radio runs of a large group of black and Hispanic kids harassing and assaulting people. So.
And where was this taking place?
This was taking place in the upper end of the park, above 96th Street.
On the east or west side?
In the middle of the park.
On the middle, okay.
Yeah.
So you headed over there?
So we headed over there.
What time was this roughly?
I finished my meal at 9. So it was around 9:15.
2,100 hours for a minute. So
military.
So we had people coming into the station house saying that they were getting attacked. We had people calling 911.
Victims?
Yeah. We had people flagging down cops. And everybody was saying the same thing. It was a large group. And
you came off meal.
Yeah.
Came off meal and you headed up there in the van.
Headed up there. Didn't see anything. Didn't see any kids. We found... Well,
Is it dark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Central Park is it's pitch black at night. The only place that's lit are the paths, the walkways, and the drive. And
so you're like in a forest, basically.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're standing just outside of a lit area, you could be standing in total darkness. Nobody would see you.
No, it's unbelievable. It's totally pitch dark. Yeah, I've been in all parts of that park.
The only places that are lit are the walkways.
Right. The walkways.
And the rest of it, there's no light.
No.
You could.
Nope.
And there's trees. There's
trees,
brush.
bushes, everything. It's parts of it are like a thick forest. But we kept looking. We had cars coming from the 2-3 and the 2-4 and the 2-0. They all came in the park. They're all driving up and down, the walkways, and nobody sees it. Nobody saw anything. So finally, a cop on foot runs into a man, a teacher. His name was John Laughlin, and he at first thought the guy was a drunk because from a long distance he could see the guy was staggering, and he's like, "Oh, he must be drunk." He gets closer, and the guy's drenched in blood. I mean, he's just completely
from his head.
Yeah, and both of his eyes were swollen shut. He was a fucking mess. So Mark found him on the west side of the reservoir. So my assumption was because, A, we didn't see any of these kids, right? B, there was a ton of cars driving around. This must have driven them out of the park, right? If you're in that group and you see all these police cars, at some point you're gonna go where the police aren't. So you're gonna leave the park. And since the last attack was on the west side, I said, let's drive out of the park on Central Park West. We'll see if we see the group in the 2-0 or the 2-4.
You're poaching again.
Exactly.
Poacher, you.
Thank God for poachers.
So,
all you need is that excuse.
Well, I'll tell you, we drove out of the park at 100th Street, and as soon as we came out, boom, there they were, right across the street from us.
How many?
There's like 30 of them.
Wow.
And my partner and I, Bobby Powers, we looked at each other, and I was like, Bobby, there's no way we're going to get these kids. I said, the most we can get is 2. The rest of them are going to be in the wind. So we decided what we were going to do. We were going to call for assistance.
Did they make your car right away or no?
No.
They didn't make you, so that's
nobody knew who we were.
That's great.
So we were about to call in 85. We were going to tell everyone, come, no lights, no sirens, come down the side streets so that we could box them in. We'll get, we still won't be able to get all of them, but we'll get, much more than we would have by ourselves. So the next thing I know, they stop. The group stops. They're across the street from us, walking uptown. They stop and they're pointing at our van. So we look at each other like, what the fuck's going on? Nobody ever makes us. So next thing I hear a rap on my window, because I was the recorder. I look over and it's this female cop in a fucking scooter. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And she looks at me, she goes, oh, I think that's them across the street. So no shit, Sherlock. What the fuck
promoted,
do you think
right?
we're doing? Oh my God!
She's a detective now. First grade.
She probably is.
She works in 1PP.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Puzzle Palace.
She'd probably get great over me.
She was out there on All Out.
So now the group, and Raymond's, by the way, as we're looking at the group, Raymond Santana and Stephen Lopez are in the front.
How old are these kids?
They're like 14, 15 years old. They're kids. They're kind of like leading the group. So they stop and they start going.
Who's leading the group? Santana
and Lopez, the two of them.
Oh, okay.
So we take the van and we pull it up and we, park perpendicular to the curb. We block their path. So then all of them start running, right? They just all start running except for Santana and Lopez. So my partner and the cop on the scooter go after the kids that are running on foot. I stood with Santana and Lopez. They told me that the group was about to rob them. They said, yeah, officer, these guys were, just about to jump us, which I knew was bullshit because we were watching them. Right. We knew, we could tell they were not about to get jumped. So I pretended to believe them because if I didn't, they were going to be in the wind, and I wouldn't be able to catch the both of them. I'd only be able to get one of them. So I told them, oh, okay, no problem. I said, if we get any of them, we'll bring them back, and we'll see if you can identify them or not. So then called in 85, a bunch of cars come. We end up getting 3 more kids.
Who'd you get?
Kevin Richardson, Lamont McCall, and Clarence Thomas. But not the Supreme Court Justice. different Clarence
Supreme
Thomas.
Court Justice.
Not yet. That was before.
Maybe Congress, maybe.
So now we got them in the car.
He was the oldest one hanging out with them, right? He must have been like 65 at the time.
He was wearing his robe. That's how we knew it was him.
And he had a gavel. It wasn't a steel pipe. It was a gavel. Turns out. Anyway, go ahead.
So another car comes. A sergeant's car comes to where I'm at, and we get Lopez and Santana. They're actually pretty surprised to, get the cuffs slapped on them because they thought they were getting over.
The whole time, yeah.
Yeah. So we bring them back to the entrance of the park. And in another car, we had the other 3 kids. The other 3 kids are now crying, right? They're crying and they're saying, look, we know who did the murder. It was Antron McCrae. We'll take you to where he lives. Now, at that point, we thought they were talking about the teacher,
right.
The guy who had his head busted open. Because we didn't know about the jogger. Nobody knew, except for them, that the jogger existed. She was still
Can I just stop you for 1 second?
Yeah.
When you arrested Santana and Lopez, did you do a show-up with anyone?
No, because the Laughlin couldn't see anything.
But there was at least, 5 or 6 other victims, right?
Yeah, and I forgot what we did.
So at that point, there was no identification procedure.
I'm trying to think. My sergeant might have done something. I'm not sure, but I remember we ended up locking them up for unlawful assembly and riot. Yeah.
Yeah. Based on what?
On the group being out there.
Well, I know at some point they were breaking light bulbs on Central Park West. Yeah. Was that before or after you stopped them?
That was before.
All right, so that was part of that. That could have been the riot charge, right?
Yeah.
Or disorderly group or whatever, right? No, I'm just trying to, because I know there was like 6 or 7 different complainants.
Right.
You know, some who had gotten assaulted, one who had gotten stabbed. The one gentleman, Lachlan, you were referring to was jogging also, right?
Right.
And he was hit with a pipe, I believe.
Yes.
Right? I mean, he was probably in the hospital, so he couldn't do a show up unless you brought the perps to the hospital.
Right.
I was just
nobody. I'm trying to think. I know we had a problem with the IDs in the beginning because there was such a large group.
Right.
You know, like the people on the tandem bike, they just put their head down and, you know, rode right through the.
All right.
the group
Let's backtrack a little bit. The 5 that you got Raymond Santana and the kid Lopez. What was his name, Michael?
Stephen Lopez.
Stephen Lopez, okay?
Yeah.
Those are 2 that you grabbed. And then in the other car, there's 3 other kids, right?
Kevin Richardson, Lamont McCall, and Clarence Thomas.
So you got 5.
Right.
Now, before we go any further, you're mentioning other victims. So let's go back to these incidents that were happening in the park. As this is unfolding, you're learning about more incidents, right?
Yes.
Give us a couple of the incidents that these 30 kids were supposedly responsible of being involved in.
They assaulted another runner. Right. Yeah, there was a guy on racing on a bike.
A tandem bike?
No, there was a couple on a tandem bike that
So
they
it was a
tried
male
to
and a
knock
female
off.
on a tandem bike.
Yes, yes, and because the woman
Were they
was,
with the mime?
No, no. Let's see. There was a taxi driver they were throwing rocks at. They threatened several joggers. I think like 2 or 3. There was a gentleman who was actually just came to the park just to have his dinner. Had a beer and Chinese food. And they fucking beat him unconscious and poured the beer over his head. And you know, and I'm sure we had other people too that were, you know, that were accosted that didn't come forward. They were just, you know, fuck this.
because this was a group of between 33 to 40 kids, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the head count, just from what I saw, was 30.
Well,
we
parts of this report it says
This is-
We
they
ended
say
up
30,
interviewing,
33.
We interviewed 37 kids.
Oh, you did?
37
37
in total.
kids.
Yeah. 37 we were able to identify.
All right, this story is starting to cook up right now. It's starting to heat up. We're going to start getting to the heart of this story and how horrible it actually was. But before we do that, we're going to have to take a break. We're going to refresh our tea, and we're going to come back, and we're gonna really start digging deep into this story and find out everything that our guest Eric Reynolds knows about this case, which is a lot, by the way. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.